somebody with a word of song. If I can help somebody as I pass along, will not be in vain, then my living shall not be in vain. Oh, then my living shall not be in vain. How can I say thank you for the things you have done for me? Things so undeserved, yet you gave to prove your love for me. Voices of 1,000,000 angels cannot express my gratitude. Oh, for all that we are and ever hope to be, we owe it all to thee.
Ladies and gentlemen, I had the pleasure, as did so many others, of being present when Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. was given the highest honor that any president of France can award or can give to any civilian or military person, the Legion of Honor. And it was conferred to Reverend Jackson in ceremony on July 19th. That was absolutely magnificent. This program and the ceremony that was preceded by a 45-minute meeting between Reverend Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, and President Macron, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, where they talked about policy issues, a number of very significant issues. And then Reverend Jackson and the president proceeded into a grand ballroom where the president of France spoke in English and conferred an incredible award to Reverend after about a 40-minute discussion of the historic nature of Reverend Jackson's contributions to the world. What was most touching and astonishing really about President Macron's comments, not that they were in English and he spoke English perfectly well, but that he had taken the time to study and to research all of the extraordinary accomplishments over 6 decades of Reverend Jackson, going into intimate detail about his childhood, his development as a young man, his contributions to the civil rights community, human rights community, labor movements, his fights, his struggles, voting rights. And he went through in a very meticulous and methodical way his history and what he's contributed. And I would dare say, having had the pleasure of representing Reverend Jackson for now 33 years and his organizations, that I have never heard a single head of state, including any American president, bestow the honor and reverence on Reverend Jackson that President Macron did.
It was a time of great struggle, a passionate, emotional battle, where the color of your skin kept you from the one thing they knew was worth risking their lives for.
I became one of 8 students who went downtown to demonstrate at the public library on Main Street.
More than a decade, starting in the mid-50s, the civil rights movement raged on. Nowhere was the divide more deeply rooted than the Deep South.
This is a demonstration in Montgomery, Alabama, led by Dr. Martin Luther King. In contrast to the violence of many marches, this one is held peacefully.
Young people led the movement. In Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 college students held sit-ins at the Woolworth's lunch counter. The sit-ins spread to lunch counters across the country. Joan Madison Daniels, one of the Greenville 8, describes how segregation affected her community.
A lady came and said, "We don't serve niggas." We said, "We didn't order any." It was just hurting, but we wanted to make a change. Even in the swimming pool, they had one big swimming pool in the park. And we would ride through the park, you couldn't swim. So one day some students went and got in the pool. Do you know they filled that pool up with dirt and planted flowers so we wouldn't be able to swim?
That chapter begins around 1959. That year, baseball great Jackie Robinson came to Greenville. As the first African American to play Major League Baseball, Robinson was active with the NAACP. While at the Greenville downtown airport, he was threatened with arrest after refusing to leave the white waiting room. It was just the spark the upstate needed. Hundreds marched that day. A few months later, a group of students was arrested at the all-white Greenville Public Library on North Main Street.
I came home from college in 1959. I'd been away for 6 months, a very long time for the first time. I was anxious to get back home and then to school.
This was supposedly a public facility. If we were taxed to support this facility, why should they have 2 different facilities? Why couldn't we go there? That was just school attire.
Ben Downs was one of the students taken to jail and part of a group later called the Greenville 8. He was just 16 years old and a student at Sterling High School.
They wanted people who, if we had been spat on or called the big N-word or even hit, set upon, we were supposed to reply in a peaceful manner.
Reverend Jesse Jackson was one of those courageous 8.
I had to do a speech with 25 annotated bibliographies. I rushed to the colored library, and Mrs. Smith said, "I don't have this number of books, but my friend at the Central Library does. So you take the note to her, and I will give her a call." By the time I got to the library, 2 police were standing with her. It didn't occur to me why they were there. I know police don't ordinarily hang around libraries. So I gave her the note. She said, "I'll give you the books in 6 days." I said, "But 6 days is too long. I need to do my work now. I have to write the speech and memorize it, prepare to present it. I need your help. Can I go and get the books downstairs?" No one was in the library but the 2 of us. The police said, "You heard what she said." I then got the message that I was faced with arrest imminently if I did not leave the library. I went outside, went out back to the library, and I cried. I felt so humiliated and so brokenhearted that I'd been denied access to those books on a timely basis. Well, I came home that summer from school, and several of my classmates had the same experience. We met at Springfield Baptist Church under the leadership of Reverend James Hall. And we determined to go downtown to use that library if it meant going to jail to dramatize our displeasure. And I should never forget, we got the preparation. If they curse you, don't say anything back. If they taunt you, don't respond. To put a cigarette on your neck, be prepared to take the hit. We must sacrifice for this higher cause. So we went through all the preparation, and then you'll probably be arrested, but take the arrest in stride. It's a fight for dignity. So after all the work had been done, we rushed down to the library, walked down there together, and the police were there. They knew we were coming. So if you don't leave we're going to arrest you. We'll give you 3 warnings. And so when they said you have to go, we left, went back to church. Reverend Hall said, why are you back so quickly? We said, because they said if we didn't leave, they were going to arrest us. He said, I sent you there to get arrested. Go back and go to jail.
A few hours later, the Greenville 8 entered the library and began to quietly read books and magazines. Refusing to leave when instructed, the police were called, and all 8 were arrested for disorderly conduct.
That became a defining moment in my life, a defining moment I struggled in South Carolina and the South to end those legal barriers.
In an oral history, Margaret Crosby, one of the Greenville 8, describes what it was like to go to jail as a teenager.
After that, we got hate phone calls. Our names were in the paper. Our telephone numbers were in the paper as if we were real bad criminals.
The reaction to the library protest varied. Whites refused to support integrated facilities. Some older blacks were also against the library protest and viewed the Greenville 8 as troublemakers. Jackson's own stepfather criticized him for how the protest and jailing reflected on their family. The Greenville City Council voted to close both libraries indefinitely, rather than be ordered to integrate the facilities. Pressure to reopen the library mounted as citizens of both races demanded a solution. D.D. Wright, one of the Greenville 8, wrote that the principle of maintaining a dual library system came at a steep price. She argued in an editorial that the integration of libraries is not only morally right, but it is also less expensive as well. On September 19th, all city libraries opened. While there was no mention of the word integration, the intent was clear. All citizens with a legitimate need to use the library were welcomed.
I think in 2016 will be 60 years since I first went to jail. Look back over a career of marching, and I thank God for allowing me to be a long distance runner. I keep marching, keep fighting as long as I shall live. To fight to the dream of all of us being treated equally, respected, and protected. God bless you, my friends, and keep hope alive.
You see, he's a man that's been making history for decades, and the rest of us that are so close to working with him are privileged to witness history being made. Reverend Jackson brings us each to a call to action. And today, watching President Emmanuel Macron stand there next to Reverend Jackson, hold hands with Reverend Jackson, delivered a message on a global basis that we share common interests and common ground when it comes to dignity, diversity, inclusion, and equality of opportunity. Today should serve as a message for all of us to heed that call of action and follow in our great leader's steps, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. God bless you, my friend.
Mesdames et messieurs, Monsieur le Président de la République, le révérend Jesse Jackson.
It is with great pride that I travel all these miles to be with my comrade and my friend. He means so much to me, and he means so much to the world. His contributions to humanity was chronicled by the president. He talked about his many contributions in terms of freeing hostages, his stance for the poor. He also tied in, Macron did, the president, the history of African Americans in this country. He noted the contribution of Josephine Baker and James Baldwin and Richard Wright and others. So there's definitely a kinship between the president of France in the president of Rainbow Push, Rev Jesse Jackson. I just applaud him, and as he often says, I've only begun. I might wear out, but I would not rest out. And we are just so pleased with the reception that Reverend has received, not only by the people here, but by the embassy, by the government. And after speaking with members of the Secretary of State, they indicated that oftentimes when these awards are given, that the president assigns those to someone. But it's respect for the moral authority and the contributions of Rev Jesse Jackson beckoned his attendance. And he stayed with us really more than he was supposed to, because he was just in awe of Reverend's accomplishments. And although he is the president of a country, he viewed Reverend as a diplomat of America and one who has international, global reach, and he has done things all over the world.
My heart is full, my soul is overflowing with love, with pride, and with joy. Reverend Jackson is so deserving for all he has done, for his life's work to secure justice and peace in this world. He helps all people and has and will continue as long as he is able.
This has been a very moving event today. I'm a Member of Parliament based in London, and I had to travel here especially, and with Brexit, it's not so easy to travel between France and London nowadays, but I'm so glad I came. It was very moving, partly because President Macron was clearly very engaged, very moved himself, very much knowledgeable and involved in Jesse Jackson's history in politics and human rights. It was very moving because President Macron made a point of talking about the links between the French and Americans, particularly Black Americans. And it was also moving because we were all reminded about the Reverend Jackson's incredible history in civil rights and human rights. And one thing I always remember from the Reverend Jackson's history in civil rights and human rights is when he ran for the presidency of the United States. And so many people were shocked, and they said, what does Jesse want? And some of us said, Jesse wants to be president. And although he didn't become president, he made it possible for Barack Obama years later to become the first Black president of the United States. Without Jesse, no Barack Obama.
Bonjour à toutes et toutes. Je viens de dire au révérend Jesse Jackson combien nous étions fiers et heureux de l'accueillir ici à Paris. Je vais dire tout le bien que nous pensons de lui et qui justifie cet honneur. Je vais plutôt le faire par commodité en anglais. I was saying how proud we are to have you here.
Can I be admitted? No, sir, you cannot be admitted. Why? I am not going to serve you. Because of my race? I'm not going to serve you.
I didn't decide to become branded as a civil rights sit-inner. I couldn't use the public library, so I sat in, and I was arrested. Took sacrifice and some risk involved in that.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. appoints Reverend Jackson in 1966 to head Chicago's Operation Breadbasket, Southern Christian Leadership Council's self-help economic uplift program. In August of 1967, Dr. King appoints Reverend Jackson National Director of Operation Breadbasket, which negotiates hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars for African American neighborhoods across the country.
The legacy then was we were fighting for a goal. The goal was a public accommodation bill, the right to vote and jobs.
During the Washington, D.C. Poor People's Campaign, Rev Jackson is appointed mayor of Resurrection City. It is here that he first fashions his signature chant of I am somebody.
I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody. I am somebody. Excel, excel, excel. Right on.
We talked about an organization that would involve people in a united struggle, and so it was people united at first to save humanity, and then at a later point it became people united to serve humanity.
Just what is Operation Push? Well, Operation Push is a civil economics organization. It's a religious organization with an economic mission. And we believe that the black church is the political and spiritual salvation of our people. And it is to that extent that we challenge churches and churchmen to get involved.
I think when I went to jail the first time, like I was born again. Something happened within me. A fire was lit that never went out, really.
We want to turn on the gas. We want to turn on the water. We want to sell the clothes. We want to sell the cars. We want to be men. We want self-determination. What time is it? When we stand together, what time is it?
Would not seek to exchange sufferers, but to stop suffering.
My father's ministry is international in scope and dimension. He's met with religious leaders from all over the world and brought up human rights concerns in all of these discussions. He's met with President Castro, with President Assad to bring hostages back.
2 American soldiers went down over Syria. The white soldier died, the black soldier, Goodman, was alive. And Reagan's position was, don't go if you don't know what you are doing. But if you do get him, bring him back. So we decided to go. And in the end, we got him out.
He proved that a black man could go out there and stand on his own, master the issues, master foreign policy.
It allowed the Syrian government the opportunity to release me without having to succumb directly to the U.S. government.
There was an anchor who said, mothers, go get your children. Bring them before the television. Sit down, hold on to your seats. You're about to hear one of the greatest speeches that you've ever heard in your life.
But just because you're born in the slum does not mean the slum is born in you and you can rise above it. We must leave racial battleground and come to economic common ground and moral higher ground. America, our time has come. And come November, there will be a change because our time has come. Thank you and God bless you. Wherever you are tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it.
I was trying to carve out a lane of healing, or a lane of hope, a lane of reconstruction and revitalization. I wanted to try to pick up the broken pieces and connect them.
Rev Jackson continues his mission of world peace by successfully negotiating the freedom, rescue, and release of captives across the globe.
He was born in Greenville, South Carolina, October the 8th, 1941. There's a hero if you look into your heart. You don't have to be afraid of what you are. There is an answer if you look into your soul. All of the sorrow that you feel will melt away.
We must pursue peace and shared existence. War is not an option. Through nonviolence, we can have shared existence. We can move from pain and fear and despair to hope, and hope must abide.
It is my honor on behalf of a proud nation to award each of them the Presidential Medal of Freedom, our highest civilian honor. In the words of our Constitution, they have helped us to secure the blessings of liberty by acts of bravery, conscience, and creativity. It's hard to imagine how we could have come as far as we have without the creative power, the keen intellect, the loving heart, and the relentless passion of Jesse Louis Jackson. And God isn't done with him yet.
Some say my future not that bright. Some say I'm useless, unholy, and I'm not living right. But at the beginning of the day, look in the mirror and say, I am somebody. Oh. Well, I believe the future's in my hand. And I tell every boy, girl, woman, and man, if I can think it, I can believe it, create it and achieve it. So I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Maybe down and pushed away, but at the end of the day, I am somebody. Oh, so take away the hate and give me love. Yeah. So take away the hate and give me love. Give me peace instead of pain, joy inside this rain, and I will remain somebody. Oh, so take away the hate and give me love. Somebody. Take away the hate and show me love. Maybe down but not destroyed, empty but not void, 'cause I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Maybe down and pushed away, but at the end of the day, I am.
You know, some of my friends in the struggle were killed, others were destroyed in so many ways. So I'm a survivor. I've been blessed to be a long distance runner. I served as faithful as I could, for as long as I could, make life better for people around me and try to leave an imprint in the sand of times.
Maybe down and pushed away, but at the end of the day, I am somebody. I am somebody.
Mr. Prime Minister, Mrs. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. We are here today to honor a great friend of France, of our Republic, someone who is highly appreciated and very popular in our country, but not just in our country. He is a visionary with a talent for uniting and leading people, with moral and physical courage, which has helped him to overcome adversity and to change the destiny of the United States, our oldest ally, and to change our world for the better. My dear Reverend Jesse Jackson, yours was a long walk towards emancipation and justice. And the paths you traveled were steep and hazardous. Born in Greenville, South Carolina, on the 8th of October 1941, in a segregated America, just a few days before the US joined the war. You grew up in an environment steeped in the infamy and obstacles associated with those times. Appalling discrimination based on skin color written into the law, a two-tier education system, unequal access to employment. In short, terrible inequalities in terms of hope and destiny, based solely on whether a person was born black or white. From your earliest years, You were hungry for knowledge and justice. At school, you were a gifted, diligent student, so much so that your French teacher commented that it was impossible not to notice you, not to like you, not to do everything possible to help you fulfill the great destiny that was already stirring inside you. The church pews where Baptist preachers taught you about public speaking and moral obligations were like a second school for you. It was there that your vocation for speaking to people's hearts and guiding them forward was kindled. This drive towards knowledge, towards others, towards God, also propelled you to sporting excellence. A very promising young American football player, on the field you showed the same discipline, the same love for movement, for looking forward, and evidently the same ability to lead that you have demonstrated in all aspects of your life. This love for movement was not simply a personal preference. It was also necessary to shake up history. Back then, the world around you was static, with the same old injustices reproducing themselves generation after generation. It was a world of racism, of institutionalized inequality, of deprivation of rights, far from the founding principles of the United States. It was a world in which you attended the segregated elementary school in Greenville, where the sports facilities you had access to were hugely inferior to those available to white children. It was a world with discrimination in public transportation and in public areas in general. But to challenge the status quo, there must be impetus, a movement. And that movement started in the mid-50s when African Americans began marching to transform the United States. And a few years later, you were among them, leading the marches alongside Martin Luther King. In 1955, you were 14 when, in Montgomery, Alabama, 500 kilometers from your home, a black lady refused to give up her seat to a white man on a bus. Rosa Parks, the lady who stood tall by remaining seated, who, in your words, sat down in order that we all might stand up, and paradoxically, whose jailing would break down the barriers of injustice and open the doors of emancipation. When Martin Luther King launched the bus boycott, you felt an irrepressible desire to follow this example so that things would change forever. In the years that followed, you took part in the movement to desegregate Greenville Public Library and led the student sit-in. After high school, you won a scholarship to play American football at the University of Illinois. Though the university was not segregated and the racial prejudices were more insidious, they were no less hurtful than in South Carolina. You returned to your native South for a while to study at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College, a prestigious, historically black university where you would meet your future wife, Jacqueline, with whom you would have your children. But Martin Luther King's call to action permanently changed your plans. Like him, you wanted to become a minister, and you returned to Chicago to attend the Chicago Theological Seminary. Chicago, your adopted city, was to be one of the hubs of the civil rights movement. It was at the University of Chicago in 1956 that Martin Luther King delivered a famous speech that resonated deeply throughout the United States. You then devoted yourself entirely to defending this cause, giving up your studies, accepting the permanent risks of being arrested, attacked, or even lynched, and you soon became one of Dr. King's closest companions. crisscrossing America to spread his call for freedom, justice, and equality, human and civil rights. We remember the photo of you standing beside Martin Luther King on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis on the 4th of April, 1968, only a few hours before his assassination. The assassination of a man of virtue, a man of peace, a 39-year-old husband and father, which provoked outrage around the world. 40 years later, on the night of Barack Obama's election, on the 4th of November 2008, you tearfully weighed up the progress made since that tragic day. That night, your tears deeply moved your compatriots who recognized your contribution to that coming-of-age moment for your nation. Because between these two dates, between these two words, 1968 and 2008, you were integral to those huge strides that were made towards genuine equality of rights and opportunity. 2 months after Martin Luther King's assassination, you were ordained a minister and took up the torch for his movement, campaigning tirelessly for civil justice and the economic and social advancement of the African American community by creating Operation Push in 1971 and then the National Rainbow Coalition in 1984. The two organizations merged in 1996 to form the Rainbow Push Coalition. Their success was built on your powerful oratory skills, your prodigious charisma, and your sense of friendship, organization, and I have to say compromise. You were able to transform your unrelenting civil activism into tangible progress in all areas. Progress which changed the daily lives of those who place their hopes in you. You also changed American politics forever by bringing these hopes to the heart of the presidential campaigns of 1984 and 1988, and including them in a political, economic, and social vision of a brotherly America which would finally fulfill the founding fathers' promise of independence and the dream of Martin Luther King. Your enthusiastic campaigning in the Democratic primaries lives long in the memory. From the bayous of Deep South to the frozen expanses of Michigan, where you sprung a surprise by winning the caucus in March 1988. Although you did not reach the end of the path to the presidency, you paved the way for those who came after and who continued to be guided by the ultimate dream of a united and reconciled America. 2008 would definitely have been impossible without your fights and your contribution. The enthusiasm and hope you generated throughout the United States resulted in huge waves of voter registration. Over 1 million in 1984, over 2 million in 1988, which helped reduce the gap in voter turnout and political involvement between white and black populations. During the 90s, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a wind of change blew across the world. You campaigned for the end of apartheid and led many international missions as a presidential envoy, fighting for access to education and for the climate. And you still follow up all these fights. I know your close link with our good friend Cyril Ramaphosa in South Africa and a lot of leaders like him, and I have a special thought for him today. In 2000, President Clinton awarded you the Presidential Medal of Freedom, your country's highest distinction. Today, It is the French Republic which is decorating you with its highest distinction. Because beyond all these contributions to your country and to civil rights, you are a special friend of France. I mentioned your French teacher at school in Greenville. Perhaps your affection for France has its roots in that class. In any case, this affection has remained with you, for which we are deeply grateful. You know our history, our relations with the United States, our singular voice in the international arena, the shared experience of the crimes of slavery and human trafficking, the role of abolitionist movements in the 19th century, our commitment to human rights, our desire for mutually respectful relations with Africa. And I'm extremely happy to have a lot of great leaders with huge contribution to these fights for our countries today in this room with you. On several occasions, you have eloquently expressed your friendship with our nation. A less-known story for which you never thought credit bears mentioning today, and we just discussed about that before the ceremony. During the first Gulf War in 1990, when citizens from several countries seeking to stop the invasion of Kuwait were held hostage by Saddam Hussein, you negotiated the release of French hostages, and thanks to you, they were safely returned to their families. Your friendship with our country, dear Jesse Jackson, is part of the heroic tradition of relations between African American and France. The French abolitionist movement was behind the subscription for the Statue of Liberty. Before that, ties between black Americans and French people from the Caribbean and the Americas, from the Great Lakes of the North to the Mississippi Delta, contributed to what could be termed the creolization of part of American society. I'm thinking of the cultural and gastronomic creativity of New Orleans, but also lesser-known chapters in our shared history, like that of Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, the mixed-race son of a French father and Afro-Caribbean mother from Santo Domingo, now Haiti, and how not to have a special thought for Haiti today, and who is considered the founder of Chicago. In 1917, when the US Army landed in France, it was operating under segregation. Black Americans were even denied the right to fight for their own country as combat troops. They were consigned to auxiliary tasks, which were essential but had little military value. The 369th and 370th infantry regiments, known as the Harlem Hellfighters and Black Devils, from New York and Chicago respectively, were those attached to the French army. Unfortunately, they did face discriminations there too, but they were able to fight alongside white men, and they did show great bravery. Those troops changed our fate in two ways: by providing us with essential help to prevail, and by introducing jazz music to our country, which would revolutionize our cultural lives for the next 100 years. Relations between France and African Americans were also at play in the landings in Normandy and Provence, when once again black soldiers overturned prejudices, defended their flag, and helped restore our freedom. Some of Martin Luther King's earliest comrades were World War II veterans, heroes of peace, but also witnesses of the horrors of the concentration camps, which helped awaken the conscience and led them into civil engagement when they returned home. And how can we not mention Josephine Baker, who herself received the Légion of Honor from General de Gaulle for her services to the French resistance. Or indeed artists and writers like Richard Wright or James Baldwin, whose legacy is still very much alive in Paris, which was a place of inspiration for them and no doubt a haven of freedom. Surely not immune to racism and prejudices, but far from the institutional, systematic forms it took in America at that time. But our friendship and our alliance, dear Jesse Jackson, go beyond historical legacies. The values you fought for and continue to fight for are the very values of the French Republic. You are not only our friend and ally, you are a brother to us. Our motto has never been far from your struggle, and I hope that it may even have inspired it. Like your friend Nelson Mandela, who theorized about the Rainbow Nation, the world you aspire to is an equal and fair one, where historical wrongs are corrected and present-day wrongs redressed. It is also a world without prejudices, without artificial barriers, where our most precious resource is our common space, to live together, to decide together, to shoulder our responsibilities together, respecting our diversity, but always serving the common good. Decorating you today, I have a special thought for Martin Luther King, obviously, and for the representative John Lewis, one of your comrades and a very special friend of mine. My dear Jesse Jackson, in the United States, some call you the great unifier, others the conscience of the nation. The core values which have earned you such high praise are those which also cherish in France. You have always taken this ideal to a higher level, driven by an unflagging hope. Because, as you often say, hope is the best weapon. Keep hope alive. The French Republic is grateful for your tireless work to promote liberty, equality, and fraternity, and for the hope you have instilled in us all for over half a century. I just described some of your main fights, your merits, but all of us are very aware of this legacy. What you deliver, what definitely is a privilege to have you here today. This is why it is an honor and a great pleasure for me, on behalf of the French Republic, to decorate you as Commander in the Légion of Honor. Monsieur Jesse Jackson, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons commandeur de la Légion d'honneur.
This has been an awesome day, and it's been tremendous to be in the company of President Macron of France. Here we are, having left the presidential palace and the estate, and my father having received the highest honor that the French government gives to a civilian He recognized my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson's work for bringing hostages out of Iraq, for his commitment to continue the legacy of Reverend Martin Luther King, for being a champion of social and economic justice for those that have been denied. We had now a private audience with the president, and my father was pressing upon him the need for continued recognition, resources, and development for Haiti. And President Macron says, wow, you really reach for the poorest of the poor. And that's notable, that's noble. And I was like moved to a bit of a tear. And then my father also mentioned the name of Major Marshall Taylor. We got a chance to see the Tour de France yesterday. And President Macron said, of course I know Major Marshall Taylor, the African-American cyclist in 1901 from Chicago. And my father says, that's not a very popular name in Chicago, in the United States. He says, Americans don't know their history. And so it was just refreshing to see the accomplishments that the French government has made over the years for those persons in the diaspora. When James Baldwin, he quoted, found comfort here. When Josephine Baker found refuge here, and Quincy Jones. And so many notables, African-American fighters in World War II, and African-American pilots that had to fly under the French flag when the United States government would not let them fly under their flag. So he was so well knowledgeable and gave my father this high honor. And we are truly thankful, grateful to the French people and to the President of France.
Whose time has come. It was extremely profound. The speech of the President of France, President Macron, was extremely thorough and presented a tableau of the entire career of Reverend Jackson as a civil rights activist, his personality. The speech also captured the various moments of his presence on stage, on the American stage, on the American historical stage. And that was very both poignant and profound. And I think that it is a well-deserved award. It recognizes not only the past, the civil rights struggle, but it also recognizes the current struggle. This is an award that recognizes also future struggles. It shows how Reverend Jackson is continuing the struggle, all the while passing the baton to new generations of leaders, of activists, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a continuity of his work. And I think that it was really a great moment. It was a great moment for Reverend Jackson himself, but also for the French people, because the French people do remember the fact that he was able to have French hostages released. Okay? And this is it was no small feat. It was extremely important to the French. He succeeded where governments had not. So this was very poignant, very profound, and extremely. It comes exactly at the right time.
Words can't describe what I just witnessed. The mutual respect, admiration, the intimacy of the event was incredible. I felt as if President Macron was seeing an old friend that he hadn't seen in a couple years, and they shared stories about their lives, but their lives were one. And they reminded us how we're all one. The speech that President Macron gave made me cry because it encapsulated Reverend Jackson and all the struggle, but the human struggle that we still face today, and how important people like Reverend Jackson are to all of us and humanity. And President Macron couldn't have been more grateful and gracious. It was astounding.
And I really want to say all my congratulations to Reverend Jesse Jackson
And we are in the black community in France, but in French community in general, very proud of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And we think that he much more than deserved the distinction that he had as Commandeur de la Légion d'honneur. Okay, so thank you very much for being here with him, with all his family, and we appreciate a lot this man. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Been very close to the Reverend in his exploitations into the new French territories such as Martinique and Guadeloupe. And I feel that this honor bestowed upon him today is well deserved and long earned for the mighty work he has been doing for all of us blacks in the world, and especially in the United States. I congratulate him on the receiving of the highest honor from the French people, and this is commendable. Merci beaucoup.
I wanted to say to Reverend Jackson, we revere you, we salute you, we honor you, and we love you. And we say thank you for all that you do, have done, and will continue to do for the world.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join the movement.